Hi and welcome. I'm Andy Miocha and you are watching Anewz. Here are the headlines. French government collapses as MPs vote to oust Prime Minister François Bayrou. Israel says it accepted Donald Trump's Gaza ceasefire proposal. 6 killed in shooting attack at a bus stop in Jerusalem. Thank you for tuning in. We're starting in France, where the government of Prime Minister François Bayrou has lost the confidence vote. With 364 votes against, Bayrou, who called the vote over his budget proposal and spending cuts, has now become the third prime minister to lose his post in about a year. In a speech ahead of the vote, Bayrou said his resignation wouldn't change much, and he told lawmakers they have the power to overthrow the government, but not to erase reality. Head of the socialist group, Boris Vallot, said Bayrou's decision to call a vote was a cop-out and an attempt to retreat from responsibility, adding he holds the president, Emmanuel Macron, who he called defeated, responsible. Far-right national rallies Marine Le Pen urged Macron to dissolve the parliament and call a snap election, saying France needs a reset. We now go to Paris live to unpack the latest developments and talk what's in store for France with political analyst Abdenour Toumi. Welcome, thank you so much for being with us. Now, with Bayrou's government gone, do you believe Macron will be on the hunt for yet another prime minister to head a minority government, or do you possibly see a snap election being called, which is something Macron said he would be reluctant to do?
Good evening, and thank you for having me on the program. Actually, what happened this evening is the result of the continuous political crisis, social uncertainty, and economic instability, in which all these three elements together was provoked by the Macron decision in 2024, when he decided to dissolve the lower chamber of the parliament. Since then, and the outcome of the result from those early parliamentary elections, that provoked an instability and made this situation more complex, in which President Macron to appoint prime minister last year, and he didn't last. And then he appointed the second one. Today he's paying the price of that stability and of that President Macron's decision. Now, what's going to happen is, sure, President Macron will appoint another prime minister in 48 hours, and then this new prime minister will be having a very, very tough mission to accomplish, because if he or she continues on the same trajectory that was set by the president, he will have or she will have the same fate like those two previous premiers got, and their government didn't last and collapsed, in which is putting now France in this political crisis that, according to constitutionalists who are actually worried now about the regime crisis because of these continuous instability and endless political solution, and coming from, starting with negotiations and compromises to break through this crisis. And this is the ball is in the courts of the main political leaders on one hand, and also, but the most element in this, the important element in this equation is the President Macron himself.
Well, as you've put it, it is a tough mission indeed. These austerity measures proved to be quite unpopular. The borrowing costs have risen due to political instability. We've heard the European Central Bank chief earlier saying that the collapse of any Eurozone government would be worrying. Do you see this new episode in Europe's second largest economy dragging the entire bloc into a crisis?
It is. I mean, it's another layer to this crisis. I mean, sure, I mean, all this domestic crisis has a regional and, to some extent, international ramifications, and notably France's position in world stage, and also, I would say, France's say in the international affairs, and notably, we know lately President Macron is trying to position himself in the posture of the European leaders in the Ukrainian crisis on one hand, and even on Middle East. I mean, calling next actually on 22nd of this September at the UN General Assembly to recognize a Palestinian state. So all these elements are weaken the president, even though, according to the French Constitution, actually it's, I would say, a way or maneuver for the president to contain this hemorrhage that is causing his credibility at home, because he is the commander-in-chief and also he is leader of the foreign policy imperatives and orientations. Nonetheless, back to your question, of course, the Europeans are very nervous about that, and knowing that Europe is having serious challenges, notably coming from the US, and in the aftermath of these unpredictable tariff war that was actually launched by President Donald Trump toward the European countries. Not so, and this is weakening, is actually weakening more Europeans and raising more instability and uncertainty for not only France but also for Europe.
Abdunur, thank you so much for joining us and providing us with your insight.
Thank you.
Across the Atlantic, U.S. President Donald Trump announced European leaders will travel to Washington this week to discuss ways of ending the Russia-Ukraine war. Speaking after the U.S. Open in New York, Trump revealed he plans to talk directly with Russia's Vladimir Putin soon. His comments came hours after Russia launched its biggest air assault of the conflict yet. Saying he is not happy with the war's current state, Trump insisted he is confident a settlement can be reached and signaled new sanctions against Moscow may follow.
I'm not happy about the whole situation. You know, it's interesting. It doesn't affect us because it's not our soldiers. But they're losing now. I used to tell you 5,000. They're losing 7,000 between Ukraine and Russia, 7,000 soldiers every single week. It's such a horrible waste of humanity. So, no, I am not thrilled with what's happening there, I will tell you. I think it's going to get settled. So I settled 7 wars. This, I would have said, would have been maybe the easiest one to settle of all. But with war, you never know what you're getting. But we're going to get it, I believe we're going to get it settled. But I am not happy with them. I'm not happy with anything having to do with that war. It's just such a waste of great humanity.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky said he expects a strong response from America following one of Russia's largest attacks of the war. Russian forces launched more than 800 drones and several missiles, striking cities including Kyiv, Odessa, and Dnipro. Zelensky praised the country's defense forces and volunteers for intercepting hundreds of drones and missiles, calling for further strengthening of air defenses. He also highlighted the importance of international support and sanctions against Russia as Kyiv prepares for upcoming Ramstein talks on new aid packages.
It is important that today we saw a broad response from our partners to this strike. Clearly, Russia is trying to inflict pain on Ukraine with even more brazen attacks. This is a clear sign that Putin is testing the world, whether they will accept or tolerate this. That is why it is important that the statements of leaders, states, and institutions be backed by strong actions. Sanctions against Russia, against individuals associated with Russia, tough tariffs, and other restrictions on trade with Russia. Their losses must be felt. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine is informing all partners about this latest Russian escalation. We are counting on a strong reaction from America. This is what is needed.
Spain has recalled its ambassador to Tel Aviv after Israeli foreign minister accused the government in Madrid of anti-Semitism and barred two of its officials' entry to the country. The spat began when the Spanish Prime Minister unveiled new measures against Israel over its war in Gaza, branding it a genocide. Pedro Sanchez announced a permanent ban on the sale of weapons to Israel, in addition to prohibiting ships carrying fuel destined for Israel's military from docking in Spain, as well as planes known to be carrying weapons from using Spanish airspace. In response, Israel accused the Spanish government of being anti-Semitic and banned Spanish Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Youth from entering Israel. With Israel signaling its approval of the U.S. deal for Gaza, pressure is mounting on Hamas to respond, as U.S. President Donald Trump warns time is running out. The deal would see hostages released and Hamas forced to lay down its arms. But so far, Hamas has not said will it accept.
Speaking in Budapest, Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Saar confirmed his government is ready to move forward with a deal that would end the war. The proposal calls for the release of Israeli hostages and for Hamas to lay down its arms.
President Trump said it clearly yesterday. Israel said yes to his proposal. We are ready to accept a full deal that would end the war based on the cabinet decision. Two things must happen. One, the return of our hostages. We still have 48 hostages kidnapped from their homes on October 7th, being held in Gaza today. Second thing, Hamas must lay down its arms.
On Sunday, President Donald Trump reinforced his push for an agreement, warning Hamas this was his last warning. Posting on Truth Social, Trump said Israel had already accepted his terms and urged Hamas to follow suit, declaring there would be no second chance.
I think we're going to have a deal on Gaza very soon. It's a hell of a problem. Again, it's a problem we want to solve for the Middle East, for Israel, for everybody. But it's a problem we're going to get done.
According to Israeli media, the plan envisions Hamas freeing 48 hostages on the first day of a truce in exchange for the release of thousands of Palestinian prisoners. Negotiations to end the war would then continue during the ceasefire.
6 people were killed and 12 others injured in Jerusalem when 2 gunmen opened fire at a bus stop on the city's northern outskirts, the police said. The victims included 3 men in their 30s and a man and a woman in their 50s. 9 people with gunshot wounds and 3 others injured by broken glass were taken to hospitals. Police said a security officer and a civilian shot and killed the attackers at the scene. No group has claimed responsibility, but Hamas praised the assault, while security forces sealed off the area for forensic checks. At least 19 people have been killed and dozens injured in Nepal after demonstrations against a government social media ban led to clashes between protesters and security forces, state-run television reported. Hospitals across the country are treating at least 347 injured protesters. Officials imposed a curfew around the parliament building after thousands of protesters tried to enter the legislature by breaking a police barricade. Nepal blocked access to several social media platforms, including Facebook, last week after they failed to register with authorities in a crackdown on misuse. The government said social media users with fake IDs have been spreading hate speech and fake news and committing fraud and other crimes via some platforms. U.S. immigration agents have carried out the largest single-site raid in history at a Hyundai car battery factory in Georgia. Nearly 475 workers, most of them South Korean nationals, were detained, sparking diplomatic tensions and urgent talks between Washington and Seoul.
Rows of workers lined up against the factory walls before being loaded onto buses. Federal agents say the raid, dubbed Operation Low Voltage, followed a months-long investigation into immigration violations at Hyundai's battery megasite near Savannah. Immigration authorities call it an unprecedented enforcement action, with hundreds of workers rounded up at the facility in what they describe as the largest single-site operation in U.S. Department of Homeland Security history. Officials confirmed 475 arrests, most at subcontractors rather than Hyundai itself. The facility, a $26 billion project with LG Energy Solutions, was set to begin operations later this year. Construction has now been paused.
You know, look, it's a battery factory in that case, as I'm told. So we're going to look at that whole situation. We have a lot of industries that we don't have anymore, and we're going to have to train people. And the way you train people is bring people in that know what they're doing and let them stay for a little while and help.
President Trump insisted the crackdown would not harm relations with Seoul, pointing to the country's recent trade deal worth over $350 billion in South Korean investments.
Following the immigration enforcement operation on the Hyundai battery plant in Georgia, I am hereby calling on all foreign companies investing in the United States to please respect our nation's immigration laws. What we ask in return is that you hire and train American workers.
In Seoul, officials moved quickly to secure the workers' release.
As a result of swift and united efforts by government ministries, business groups and companies, talks with the United States for the release of the detained workers have been concluded. What remains now are only administrative procedures. And once those are completed, a chartered plane will depart to bring our people home.
South Korea says it will now review visa rules for overseas workers on U.S. projects to prevent similar incidents.
To prevent a similar incident in the future, we will work with the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy and related companies to review and improve the residency status and visa system.
But the fallout is already being felt. Hyundai shares dropped nearly 1%, LG Energy Solutions down more than 2%. Rights groups condemned the raid as politically motivated, while Georgia's governor defended federal enforcement. The workers remain in detention in Folkestone, Georgia. A chartered flight is being prepared to repatriate South Korean nationals as both governments scramble to contain what could become a flashpoint in US-South Korea relations.
Afghanistan and Turkmenistan are pushing ahead with major energy projects, including new power lines and the Tapi gas pipeline. The two countries say talks in Kabul mark a step towards stronger regional cooperation. Our Tamim Bahis has the details.
Afghanistan's Minister of Water and Energy Abdul Latif Mansour met with Turkmenistan's Minister of Energy along with the head of the international TAP project and Turkmen ambassador. The two sides discussed major regional projects, including the transmission of 1,000 megawatts of electricity from Turkmenistan to Kabul, speeding up the TAP 500 power line and advancing the multi-billion-dollar Tapi gas pipeline project. Minister Mansour emphasized Afghanistan's readiness to coordinate and fully support the implementation of these projects. He also reaffirmed the Islamic Emirates' commitment to strengthening bilateral ties, particularly in the fields of water and energy development. The Turkmen Energy Minister expressed condolences for the victims of the recent earthquake in eastern Afghanistan and praised ongoing cooperation. He said Turkmenistan is fully prepared to move forward with all agreed projects, noting that the international TAP electricity project is already making solid progress. Both sides concluded the meeting by stressing the importance of expanding relations and ensuring long-term constructive cooperation. This is Tamim Bahis in Kabul for Anewz.
Uzbekistan has sent humanitarian aid to Afghanistan following the recent deadly earthquake, delivering food, medicine and blankets. Separately, the two countries signed a major $250 million worth energy deal to boost Afghanistan's power supply and infrastructure. Our Sevil Rajapova has more.
Following an earthquake in Afghanistan with a magnitude of 6, Uzbekistan sent humanitarian aid to assist the affected population. A convoy of 14 trucks departed from Anewz carrying nearly 265 tons of essential goods. The shipment included flour, rice, sugar, pasta, vegetable oil, beans, and other food products, as well as medicines and more than 5,000 blankets. The cargo was delivered to Balkh province and officially handed over at the Hayratan crossing. During the ceremony, representatives from both sides highlighted the importance of timely assistance in times of crisis and emphasized that such cooperation demonstrates the strength of good neighborly relations. Alongside this, Uzbekistan's Ministry of Energy, together with Afghanistan's electricity company, Da Afghanistan Birch Shirkat, signed a $250 million agreement to modernize the country's power infrastructure. The projects covered by this agreement include the construction of a 500 kilovolt transmission line from Suhan to Puli-Kumburi. The Arkhanty substation near Kabul will be expanded, increasing its capacity to handle imported electricity. In the east of the country, a new 220 kilovolt line to the Sheikh Misri substation will be built, along with the complete modernization of the Sheikh Misri substation in Kandahar province. Once completed, these projects are expected to allow Afghanistan to import between 800 and 1,000 megawatts of electricity from Uzbekistan. The new infrastructure will help stabilize electricity delivery to central and southern provinces, ensuring more reliable power for households, businesses, and essential services. Together, these efforts underline a practical and steadily development partnership between the two countries. It's Sevil Rajapova reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, Anewz.
A U.S. trade mission visited Azerbaijan, where they met with the country's foreign minister, Ceyhun Bayramov, to discuss the Middle Corridor. The readout of the meeting said two sides spoke on the connectivity project agreed in August in Washington between the presidents of the U.S. and Azerbaijan and Armenia's prime minister. The need for unhindered links between Azerbaijan's western regions and Nakhchivan was also stressed during the meeting. Other items on the agenda included the development of the infrastructure along the Middle Corridor, energy security, and renewables. On the meeting and the message it sends, we're talking with retired U.S. diplomat Richard Hoagland, coming to us from Washington. Welcome, thank you for joining us. Now, following up on the White House agreement regarding the so-called Trump route, a corridor linking Azerbaijan with Nakhchivan, a U.S. delegation visited Baku. What do you make of the visit itself, coming exactly 1 month later, and the significance of the route itself for broader projects such as the Middle Corridor?
Thank you for the good question. It's an important step forward. This means that we are actually taking steps to move forward rather than just having words on paper. And even though the delegation is officially in Azerbaijan right now, it has also been announced that it will be in Armenia. So it's looking at both sides. It's looking at the entire trip corridor to see what is possible.
As you've put it, it is just one of the steps in the process. We've seen another one with the OSCE Minsk group being dissolved at the request of both Baku and Yerevan. How much would you say that the U.S. has contributed to the peace process in general?
Well, I'm smiling because I was once a co-chair of the Minsk group, and I remember very well how often we tried and tried, but were not able to move forward with what we were supposed to do. I think the United States is serious about being involved in this step. It's something new. We haven't been this involved for a good number of years. And I certainly hope that we move forward and do the right thing.
Well, it was also stated that the meeting in Baku also tackled energy security of Europe, given Azerbaijan's natural gas deliveries across the continent. How important do you believe that to be, given Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine and the Europeans, well, most of them anyway, wanting to cease any energy ties with Moscow?
I think it's terribly important because the United States has not been this involved since really the 1990s under President Carter. The reason we were involved then was to make sure that the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline was built. What's being looked at now and talked about behind the scenes is, once again, the Trans-Caspian pipeline. This is something that has been on the books on paper for a very long time, but it hasn't happened yet.
So trade and energy is the future of U.S.'s relations to the region, according to you, yes?
Well, I think trade and energy, but what that does is open the door for many other kinds of on-the-ground resource connections between the two regions, between the countries. What it does is open the door for many things beyond trade and energy. And that's what I hope will certainly happen. It makes sense because Russia is deeply involved in its war in Ukraine. Iran is looking internally these days. It's a very good time for the United States to once again play a somewhat larger role in the region, which we have not done for a good number of years now. It's time.
Thank you so much for your insight and opinions.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Azerbaijan-China relations are entering a new stage. Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev's recent visit to China for the SCO summit in Tianjin and the Victory Parade in Beijing are seen as an important milestone in the partnership between the two countries. The Chinese ambassador to Azerbaijan, Lu Mei, held a press briefing highlighting the outcomes of the visit and outlining new opportunities for bilateral cooperation.
Azerbaijan and China continue to strengthen their comprehensive strategic partnership, expanding cooperation in politics, the economy, culture and innovation. Guided by the strategic leadership of the two heads of state, China-Azerbaijan relations are steadily advancing and have already reached the highest level in their history. This was underlined by the Chinese ambassador to Azerbaijan, Lu Mei, during a briefing with journalists in Baku.
The firm support for each other on issues concerning core interests and major concerns is a proud tradition of China and Azerbaijan, as well as a natural component of comprehensive strategic partnership. President Ilham Aliyev's visit to China itself stands as a practical demonstration of support for China's chairmanship of the SCO, for China's commemoration of the victory in the Chinese People's War of Resistance against Japanese aggression and the World Anti-Fascist War, and for the principles of multilateralism, international equality and justice.
In his address at the SCO Plus meeting on the 1st of September in Tianjin, President Ilham Aliyev noted that Azerbaijan has actively supported the Global Development Initiative, the Global Security Initiative, and the Global Civilization Initiative proposed by China to promote international peace, security, and development.
Both China and Azerbaijan are countries of the Global South and represent a central force in reforming and improving global governance. China is ready to cooperate with the countries of the Global South, including Azerbaijan, to set an example of cooperation in advancing the Global Governance Initiative, promoting the establishment of a more just and rational system of global governance.
The ambassador also stressed that China attaches great importance to the role of the Trans-Caspian international transport route in enhancing regional connectivity, promoting regional economic development, and ensuring the stability of global production and supply chains. The diplomat also noted that China and Azerbaijan made an indelible historical contribution to the victory in the world anti-fascist war. Both countries today stand as a central force in upholding multilateralism, international equality and justice.
I have specifically studied the recently published historical materials from the Azerbaijani side and learned that more than 40,000 Azerbaijanis served in the Far Eastern and Transbaikal fronts, actively taking part in the battles against Japan's Kwantung Army. These soldiers made a significant contribution in the battles for key Chinese cities, such as Harbin, Shenyang, and Changchun.
The head of China's diplomatic mission in Baku concluded, looking to the future, the comprehensive strategic partnership between China and Azerbaijan holds broad prospects and great promise. She emphasized that the Chinese side stands ready to work closely with Azerbaijan, guided by the diplomacy of the two heads of state and the important agreements reached at the highest level.
Russia hopes for a quick resumption of the 3+3 format, which brings together Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia, and three neighbors, Russia, Iran, and Turkey, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said. He emphasized the importance of reviving dialogue to strengthen regional cooperation among South Caucasus states and their neighbors. Earlier, Armenia's Deputy Foreign Minister Vahan Kostanyan suggested the next meeting of the format could take place in Yerevan or Baku. Iran and the International Atomic Energy Agency are set to meet at the expert level in the coming days to discuss the new bilateral cooperation modality following the 12-day war between Israel and Iran that targeted Tehran's nuclear sites. Artura Shiralilu has the details.
Iran's foreign ministry spokesman Ismail Baghai said that representatives from Iran and the International Atomic Energy Agency IAEA will be meeting to continue their talks at the expert-level discussions about the future format of cooperation after Iran's civilian nuclear sites were bombed last June. Speaking at the weekly press conference today, following the third round of talks between Iranian and IAEA experts in Vienna on Friday and Saturday, the spokesman said that there are ongoing contacts despite of the legislation on suspension of the relations with the UN nuclear watchdog. According to Baghai, the IAEA has come to the conclusion that Tehran's views on a new mode of cooperation shall be heard and its concerns be addressed after Iran's nuclear sites under the UN safeguards were bombed by Israel and the US. The Iranian diplomat also termed as positive the talks between Foreign Minister Abbas Araqchi and the European Union's Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas in Doha, Qatar last week. The Doha meeting took place after the European powers, France, Germany and the UK, which are signatories of the 2015 Iran Nuclear Agreement, or JCPOA, in a letter to the UN Security Council in August, referred their dispute with Tehran to the world body. Iran, together with China and Russia, which are also parties to the JCPOA, as well as Security Council permanent members with veto power, sent a joint letter rejecting the call by the European Troika on demanding return of Iran's nuclear sanctions. Moreover, Russia and China have proposed a resolution to extend Iran's nuclear sanctions exemptions for 6 months, and in the meantime, to continue negotiations over reaching an agreement with Tehran. Iran's foreign ministry spokesman said that in addition to China and Russia, there are other members of the Security Council which are not satisfied with the E3's move calling for a snapback of the nuclear sanctions under Resolution 2231, which expires in October. Turaj Shiralilu, reporting for Anewz TV, Tehran.
Over in Georgia, the volume of foreign direct investments in the second quarter of this year amounted to $580 million, which is 12% less than the same period last year. According to the National Statistical Service report, this is mainly due to reinvestment and a decrease in debt obligations. The largest investor was the UK with $242 million, or 41.8% of total foreign direct investments, followed by Turkey with $54 million and Czechia in third place with $38 million. The three countries make up more than 57% of the total. Firefighting efforts continue in Turkey's southeastern Hakkari region after a blaze that was mostly controlled on Sunday reignited early on Monday.
A forest fire that broke out on Sunday evening in Turkey's Hakkari province, Şemdinli district, spread rapidly due to strong winds and reignited this morning, prompting renewed firefighting efforts. Teams from the Forestry Directorate, District Gendarmerie, AFAD, Health Directorate, Special Administration, fire brigades and local security guards are working with villagers to prevent the fire from reaching residential areas. Helicopters from Elazığ, an eastern province of Turkey, have completed 6 aerial sorties. Precautions have been taken for 21 households, and 25 gendarmerie personnel are on site to reduce the risk of carbon monoxide poisoning. Residents were safely evacuated, and crews continue to work to fully extinguish the blaze. The cause of the fire remains unknown, but similar blazes have been linked to human activity and climate conditions. Southeastern regions like Hakkari face heightened fire risks due to high temperatures and dry weather, with experts warning that climate change is making wildfires more frequent and intense.
U.S. lawmakers have proposed new conditions on future F-35 fighter jet sales to Turkey under the 2026 defense bill. The bipartisan amendment would prohibit deliveries unless the White House certifies that Ankara is not supporting or cooperating militarily with Russia, China, Iran, or North Korea. Another provision calls for a detailed investigation into whether Turkey harbors Hamas members or assets and how its regional activities impact U.S. and allied security. Turkey was expelled from the F-35 program in 2019 after buying Russia's S-400 system, and Congress has since resisted its return. Kazakhstan's President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev addressed the nation outlining major changes from political reform to strengthening the country's energy and technological independence. Our Fariza Kalimurzina has more on the announcements in Almaty.
One of the main initiatives highlighted by the President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev was the proposal to move to a unicameral parliament. According to Tokayev, merging the two chambers will make the legislative branch more efficient and responsive. At the same time, he emphasized that this is a serious step requiring careful and broad public discussion involving experts in the current parliament. The president suggested allocating at least a year for this dialogue, and by 2027, a nationwide referendum is planned to decide on the necessary constitutional changes. Currently, Kazakhstan operates a bicameral system, which has been in place since 1995. Experts believe switching to a unicameral system could strengthen the parliament and improve its cohesion. Political analyst Gazi Zapeshev, commenting for Anewz, pointed out that in this new model, the role of the majority leader becomes more important, enabling parliament to make decisions more quickly and effectively. Turning to economic matters, the president placed strong emphasis on the country's energy security. Construction of Kazakhstan's first nuclear power plant has already begun in the Almaty region, in partnership with the Russian corporation Rosatom. However, Tokayev made it clear that this project alone will not be enough to sustain long-term economic growth. He called for planning the second and third nuclear power plants to ensure future stability. The president also highlighted a recent meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping, where they agreed on a strategic partnership in the field of nuclear energy. Kazakhstan remains open to cooperation with all global companies, Tokayev stressed. This openness, he said, is key to strengthening the country's energy sovereignty. On foreign policy, the president emphasized a balanced and constructive diplomatic approach. He highlighted recent visits to Turkey and Kyrgyzstan and announced upcoming trips to Russia and Uzbekistan. Plans also include meetings with leaders from Azerbaijan, Armenia, Turkmenistan, and several Asian and European countries. Regarding domestic development, Tokayev set an ambitious goal to launch several rare earth metal enterprises within the next 3 years. At the same time, Kazakhstan aims to become a fully digital nation. And according to the president, large-scale digitalization and the integration of artificial intelligence are key to modernizing the economy. From Almaty, Kazakhstan, Farisa Kalimurzina, Anewz.
Stargazers in Azerbaijan joined millions around the world to witness the year's second lunar eclipse. Here in Baku, families gathered for a public astronomy event where telescopes and experts brought the blood moon into view, turning the night sky into a classroom. Among those taking part were children of those who've died in the Second Karabakh War. Our Arya Fatih joined them to find out more.
It's my first time seeing this. I liked it.
Stargazers across the world were treated to a rare spectacle last night, the second lunar eclipse of 2025. And in Azerbaijan, a special public event in Baku allowed children and families to observe the eclipse through telescopes, get photography tips, and enjoy short astronomy explanations, all safely without the need for special glasses. Among those invited were children of the soldiers fallen in the war for the liberation of Azerbaijan's territories. Organisers say the event was not only to spark curiosity, but to also give the children moments of joy and healing as they continue to cope with trauma.
When I saw a moon, I saw details. It was like in photos from Google, and I thought, wow, but I see this right now with my eyes by myself, and yeah, it's so grateful.
These events are very special. They happen very rarely, like once in a year, and it's always amazing to see these natural views.
I feel good. It is interesting here. I am thankful to family for being here. It is my first time seeing this kind of thing.
The total lunar eclipse occurs when the sun, the earth, and the moon align perfectly, casting Earth's shadow on the moon. Instead of disappearing, though, the moon turns a striking red, a blood moon, caused by sunlight bending through the Earth's atmosphere. The event was organized by the Amateur Astronomers Society, and it was free for all those who attended.
These types of events are interesting because half of the world population can all see this with their bare eye or telescope. Kids are the most interested. That's why we organize the event. We want to show them how the moon disappears from the sky. It is very important to show these events to people to help their worldview.
For those who witnessed it, the eclipse was a striking reminder of the rare sights the night sky can offer.
Well, that's all we have for you for now. Thank you so much for watching and stay tuned to Anewz.